I'm Alana, 32, a tech specialist with a passion for innovation that my family never understood. Don't mention your job, my mom whispered at our family dinner, stabbing me with invisible daggers. That night, I made a silent promise to myself as they showered my sister with praise. I focused on my career, channeled my heart into ambition, and eventually landed on Forbes 40 Under 40. My family? They found out through Google. That was the moment they realized they had lost me. Before I share how my family lost me and what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever felt unappreciated by the people who should support you most. My obsession with technology started early. At 8 years old, while other kids were playing with dolls or action figures, I was mesmerized by my uncle's computer. By 12, I'd taught myself basic programming using library books. Our family computer was off limits for my experiments, so I'd sneak time when my parents weren't home. I remember dismantling our old radio, figuring out how each component worked, then reassembling it perfectly. My mom, Patricia, nearly had a heart attack when she saw electronic parts spread across my bedroom floor. Alana, what on earth are you doing? This isn't appropriate for a young lady, she exclaimed, gathering the pieces as if they were dangerous weapons. In 7th grade, I won first place in the school science fair with a simple inventory management software I'd created. While other students presented vinegar volcanoes or plant growth experiments, I demonstrated how my program could track library books more efficiently. My science teacher, Mrs. Jackson, was impressed enough to suggest I consider computer science for college. When I excitedly shared this with my parents over dinner, the silence was deafening. "That's interesting, dear," my father Thomas said after an uncomfortable pause. "But don't you think it's just a phase? You've always been good at biology. That's a more stable career path." My parents weren't ordinary people with ordinary expectations. Thomas Foster was a renowned cardiac surgeon, following in the footsteps of his father and grandfather. My mother, Patricia, came from a long line of corporate attorneys and had made partner at her firm by 32. Our home in the affluent part of Boston was decorated with medical journals featuring my father's research and legal awards acknowledging my mother's courtroom victories. Growing up, dinner conversations revolved around medical breakthroughs and landmark legal cases. My grandparents on both sides were respected pillars of the community. At family gatherings, the talk inevitably turned to the Foster legacy and how each generation had elevated the family name in medicine and law. Then there was my sister, Samantha, for years younger. With our mother's striking blue eyes and our father's confident demeanor, Sam was the golden child from the moment she announced her interest in medicine at age 10. While I was hunched over circuit boards in my room, Sam was attending junior medical camps. When she brought home perfect grades in science, my parents would beam with pride. Just like her father. They'd say, as if I wasn't in the room, "Don't misunderstand. I loved Sam." We shared secrets and laughed at our parents' formality when they weren't around. But over time, the inequity in how we were treated drove a wedge between us. The look of genuine joy on my father's face when Sam discussed cellular biology was something I'd never seen when I talked about my interests. The difference in treatment became painfully obvious during high school. I joined the computer club and helped our team win several regional competitions. My trophy sat on my desk, while Sam's soccer participation medal was prominently displayed in the living room. When I was invited to attend a summer tech camp at MIT, my parents refused. "It's not a productive use of your summer," my father stated. "Why not volunteer at the hospital instead? That would look better on college applications." What they didn't know was that I had already started applying for computer science scholarships behind their backs. My grandmother Margaret, my mother's mother, was the only one who seemed to understand me. A former literature professor with a rebellious streak, she would slip me books on programming and listen to my tech dreams without judgment. "They're afraid of what they don't understand," she told me one afternoon as we shared tea in her garden. Your path is different, but no less valuable. Sometimes the hardest thing is to disappoint those we love in order to be true to ourselves. When I received a full scholarship to study computer science at Stanford, I was ecstatic. The day I told my parents, I'd prepared a presentation about career prospects and starting salaries in tech. I never got to show it. "This is a mistake," my father said flatly. "We won't support this foolishness. The Foster name has stood for excellence in medicine and law for generations. Your father and I are concerned about your future," my mother added. "If you insist on this path, you'll have to do it without our financial support." That night, I cried until my eyes burned. Not because of the financial threat, my scholarship would cover tuition, but because I realized my accomplishments would never be good enough unless they aligned with their predetermined vision for my life. The contrast couldn't have been more stark when, 2 years later, Samantha was accepted to Harvard Medical School. My parents threw an elaborate party, inviting extended family and colleagues to celebrate. I was in my junior year at Stanford, working 2 part-time jobs to cover living expenses, and could only attend via video call. I watched as they toasted the continuation of the Foster medical tradition while I sat alone in my dorm room, feeling like an outsider in my own family. The geographic distance between Boston and California seemed small compared to the emotional chasm that had formed. Our family calls became less frequent, with my parents asking perfunctory questions about my studies before eagerly turning the conversation to Samantha's experiences. Only Margaret maintained regular contact, sending encouraging emails and care packages with notes saying, "Keep breaking new ground." Looking back, I can see how those formative years shaped the silence that would later define my relationship with my family. The seeds of disconnect were planted early, watered by dismissal, and fertilized by comparison. I wasn't just pursuing a different career path, I was challenging a multi-generational identity that my family held sacred. And for that unspoken transgression, I would pay with their approval. Graduating with highest honors from Stanford should have been one of the proudest moments of my life. As I stood on stage, scanning the audience for familiar faces, I spotted only one, my grandmother Margaret, who had flown across the country despite her arthritis. My parents had sent a brief email explaining they couldn't miss an important medical conference my father was keynoting. Samantha was in the middle of final exams. The empty seats reserved for my family spoke volumes. "They'll come around," Margaret assured me at our celebratory lunch. Success is the best revenge, though revenge shouldn't be your motivation. I had multiple job offers waiting, including positions at established tech giants. But something about Horizon Technologies, a promising AI startup, resonated with me. Their mission to revolutionize healthcare through technology felt like a bridge between my world and my family's, though I wouldn't admit that was a factor in my decision. Walking into Horizon's office on my first day was intimidating. In a team of 25 engineers, only 2 were women. During my first week, a male colleague asked if I was lost when I entered the server room, assuming I was from HR or administration. Another suggested I take notes during a meeting, despite my equal standing on the team. I quickly learned I'd need to work twice as hard to earn half the respect automatically granted to my male counterparts. Marcus Wellington, my direct supervisor, was different. A brilliant developer with piercing brown eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, he evaluated people solely on merit. When I developed an algorithm that significantly improved our data processing efficiency in my 3rd month, he took notice. "This is impressive work, Foster," he said, leaning against my desk while reviewing my code. "I've been in this industry 15 years, and I rarely see this level of innovation from someone so new. Keep this up, and you won't be a junior developer for long." True to his word, I was promoted to senior developer within 8 months, a record at the company. The promotion came with a substantial salary increase, allowing me to move from my shared apartment to a small 1-bedroom in San Francisco's Mission District. My new neighbor, Heather Thompson, was a graphic designer who worked freelance. We bonded over late nights and takeout, comparing notes on being women in male-dominated creative fields. Where my family had dismissed my passion, Heather celebrated it. She became the sister I felt I'd lost, offering unconditional support without the competitive undertones that had colored my relationship with Samantha. "Your family's crazy not to be proud of you," she said one night after I'd shared stories of my childhood. "You're literally changing the future of technology." Despite my professional success, finances were tight. San Francisco's cost of living consumed most of my salary, and I was determined not to ask my parents for help. I took on freelance coding projects on weekends, sometimes working through the night to meet deadlines. Each time I felt like giving up, I'd remember my father's dismissive tone when discussing my career choice and find a second wind. 2 years into my time at Horizon, I received an unexpected email from my mother. The family was having a special dinner to celebrate Samantha successfully completing her first year of residency with honors. Would I be able to attend? Something in me yearned for reconnection, for validation. Maybe seeing my success firsthand would change their perspective. I booked a flight to Boston. The Foster family home looked exactly as I remembered: imposing colonial architecture, immaculate landscaping, the dignified presence that had always made me feel I needed to be on my best behavior. Inside, my grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins had already gathered. Samantha was at the center of attention, animated as she described a complicated procedure she'd assisted with. Before I could join the group, my mother pulled me aside into the hallway. Patricia Foster had barely aged, her blonde hair now highlighted with tasteful silver, her posture as perfect as ever. She straightened my blazer, a gesture that immediately transported me back to childhood. "Alana, darling, it's wonderful to see you," she said, her voice lowered. "Before we join everyone, I think it's best if you don't mention your work tonight. Your grandparents wouldn't understand all that computer business, and tonight is about celebrating Samantha's achievements in medicine. We don't want to complicate things or confuse the conversation." The words hit me like a physical blow. I had just been promoted to project manager, leading a team developing AI applications for medical diagnostics, something directly relevant to my family's interests. I had prepared to share how technology was transforming healthcare, thinking it might finally bridge our worlds. Instead, I was being asked to erase a fundamental part of myself. "I see," was all I could manage, my voice tight. Dinner was excruciating. I sat silently as relatives peppered Samantha with questions about her residency, professors, and future specialization plans. My father beamed with pride as she described diagnosing a rare condition. My mother expertly directed the conversation, ensuring Samantha remained in the spotlight. "And what about you, Alana? Still doing that computer thing in California?" my Uncle Frank asked during a lull. Before I could answer, my mother jumped in. "Alana's doing well. Did you know Samantha might have an opportunity to join Dr. Harrison's research team next year?" I caught my father's subtle look of disappointment at the mention of my career, quickly masked as the conversation returned to medicine. Under the table, my grandmother Margaret reached for my hand, giving it a supportive squeeze. She knew. She always knew. That night, I cried the entire Uber ride back to my hotel. Heather answered my tearful call despite the late hour in San Francisco. "They asked me not to talk about my work," I sobbed. "My own mother told me to hide what I do, who I am." "That's their loss, not yours," Heather said firmly. "Their approval isn't worth your authenticity." As the car navigated Boston streets, I made a decision that would alter the course of my relationship with my family. If they didn't want to know about my career, the thing I poured my heart and soul into daily, then I wouldn't force them. I would never again attempt to share my professional accomplishments with them. If they couldn't be bothered to ask genuine questions or show real interest, they didn't deserve to witness my success. I returned to San Francisco with a new clarity and focus. My family had made their choice, prioritizing tradition and appearances over understanding who I truly was. Now I would make mine. I would build something so undeniably impressive that they couldn't ignore it, not to win their approval, but to prove to myself that their validation had never been necessary. The only people I would share my journey with were those who had earned the right through their support, Margaret and Heather. Everyone else would have to read about it in the news. For the next 3 years, I poured everything into my work at Horizon Technologies. While my peers maintained work-life balance, I embraced an almost monastic dedication to my career. 80-hour workweeks became my norm. I volunteered for holiday shifts, used vacation days to attend industry conferences, and transformed my apartment into a secondary workspace. My rapid rise from project manager to director of AI research raised eyebrows, but no one could question my results. The neural network I designed for medical image analysis outperformed existing technologies by a significant margin. When our CEO presented my work at industry conferences, investors took notice. So did competitors. Marcus, now the CTO, became more than a boss. He became a mentor. Unlike my parents, who tried to reshape my interests, Marcus helped refine my natural talents. The difference between good engineers and great ones isn't technical skill, he told me during one late-night coding session. It's understanding the business impact of what you're building. Learn that, and you'll be unstoppable. Under his guidance, I developed skills beyond programming, strategic thinking, team leadership, stakeholder management, and the ability to translate complex technical concepts for non-technical audiences. When our medical diagnostics project secured a major hospital contract, the bonus I received allowed me to put a down payment on a small condo in the city. My professional growth coincided with increasing emotional distance from my family. Our interactions became perfunctory, brief calls on holidays, generic birthday messages. I never initiated discussions about my work, and they rarely asked beyond vague inquiries about whether I was still at that computer company. Samantha completed her residency and began specializing in oncology, events I learned about through my mother's carefully curated social media posts rather than personal communication. Only Margaret remained a constant, though her health was declining. Our weekly video calls were precious lifelines to authentic family connection. She never pressured me to reconcile with my parents, but encouraged me to remain open to the possibility of future healing. Grudges are heavy luggage to carry through life, Alana, she would say. Not forgiving doesn't hurt them nearly as much as it hurts you. It was at a healthcare innovation conference in New York where I met Daniel Jackson. Tall, with kind eyes and an infectious enthusiasm for technology's potential to transform medicine, Daniel was presenting research on AI applications in radiology. His startup had developed an algorithm similar to what I was working on at Horizon, though our approaches differed significantly. What started as a professional debate over methodology during the conference happy hour evolved into dinner, then breakfast the next morning. Daniel's passion for merging technology and healthcare mirrored my own, and for once, I felt completely understood without having to justify my career choice. Our relationship developed organically. Based in Chicago, Daniel and I maintained a bicoastal connection through video calls, collaborative coding sessions, and weekend visits. He never questioned my dedication to work or suggested I should prioritize our relationship over my career ambitions. Instead, he became my sounding board, challenging my ideas and expanding my thinking. Have you considered how your algorithm could be applied to preventative medicine rather than just diagnostics? He asked during one of our technical discussions. The predictive potential could transform how we approach healthcare entirely. 6 months into our relationship, Daniel and I were sketching out ideas for an AI platform that could detect subtle anomalies in medical images, potentially identifying conditions like cancer months earlier than human radiologists could. The implications were enormous. We should build this, he said, the excitement evident in his voice. Not just as a feature within our current companies, but as something entirely new. Something that could save millions of lives. The idea was both exhilarating and terrifying. I had stability at Horizon, a clear career trajectory. Starting over meant risk. But before we could seriously explore the possibility, my world shifted on its axis. Margaret died suddenly of a heart attack on a Tuesday morning. I was in a product development meeting when my phone lit up with my mother's name. a rare enough occurrence that I immediately excused myself to answer. "She's gone, Alana," my mother said, her voice uncharacteristically fragile. "Your grandmother passed this morning. The funeral is Friday." The loss was devastating. Margaret had been my champion, my confidant. The one person in my family who saw me clearly and loved me unconditionally. At her funeral, I delivered a eulogy that captured her rebellious spirit, her intellectual curiosity, and her gift for making people feel valued exactly as they were. As I spoke, I noticed my family members exchanging surprised glances, seemingly unaware of the depth of relationship we'd maintained. After the service, my cousin Elaine approached me. "I had no idea you and Grandma were so close. She always spoke so highly of you, but I didn't realize you talked so regularly." "Every week for the past 5 years," I replied softly. Another detail of my life my family hadn't bothered to learn. Margaret's attorney contacted me the following week. She had left me her personal library, a modest financial inheritance, and a letter. Sitting alone in my San Francisco apartment, I broke the wax seal on the envelope, recognizing her distinctive stationery. "My dearest Alana," she wrote. "If you're reading this, I've finally lost an argument with time. Don't grieve too long. Instead, use whatever resources I've left you to build something remarkable. You've spent years proving yourself to a family that wasn't looking. Now build something for those who will benefit from your brilliant mind. Create the future they couldn't imagine for you. And when you succeed, not if, but when, remember that validation comes from impact, not applause. I have always seen you, even when others looked past you. Now let the world see what I've always known was there. All my love, Margaret." I read the letter a dozen times, tears streaming down my face. Then I called Daniel. "I'm ready," I said when he answered. "Let's build this company." 2 weeks later, I resigned from Horizon. Marcus was disappointed but understanding. "You've outgrown us," he said simply. "Come back if it doesn't work out, but something tells me you won't need to." With my savings, Margaret's inheritance, and Daniel's initial investment, we rented a small office space in Palo Alto. Mediscan AI was born with a founding team of 5, Daniel and I as co-founders, plus 3 talented engineers I'd worked with previously. Our mission was clear: develop AI that could detect early-stage cancers and other conditions from standard medical images with greater accuracy than human radiologists. The early months were grueling. We worked around the clock, subsisting on ramen and coffee, writing code until our eyes burned. Our initial algorithm showed promise in controlled tests, but wasn't reliable enough for clinical settings. Investors were interested but hesitant, waiting for more proof before committing significant funding. By month 4, tensions began to surface between Daniel and me. Our technical approaches diverged, and our leadership styles clashed. Daniel favored rapid expansion, hiring more engineers, pursuing multiple applications simultaneously. I insisted on perfecting our core technology before scaling. "We're burning through cash too quickly," I argued during a particularly heated late-night discussion. "If we don't get this right first, nothing else matters. If we move too slowly, someone else will beat us to market," Daniel countered. "This isn't academia, it's business." The stress affected our personal relationship. Date nights became strategy sessions. Romantic weekends turned into working retreats. 6 months into our venture, we made the painful decision to end our romantic relationship while maintaining our professional partnership. "I care about you too much to watch us destroy what we have personally for what we're building professionally," Daniel said as we sat on the floor of our nearly empty office, sharing the last bottle of wine from a case a potential investor had sent. "The company needs both of us," I agreed. "But maybe we need space from each other outside these walls." The breakup was amicable, but added another layer of loss to an already challenging year. With Margaret gone, my family distant, and now my relationship with Daniel redefined, I threw myself even more completely into building Mediscan. The company became my identity, my purpose, and my family all at once. Success wasn't just a professional goal anymore, it was personal vindication. The breakthrough came after 2 years of relentless iteration. I had been working on a novel approach to image recognition, drawing inspiration from how the human visual cortex processes information. After 3 straight days of coding with minimal sleep, I implemented a neural network architecture unlike anything we'd tried before. When we ran the first test at 2:43 a.m., the results were so promising I thought I'd made an error in the evaluation metrics. We ran it again and again. By sunrise, we had confirmation. Our algorithm could detect subtle indicators of lung cancer in CT scans with 98% accuracy, significantly outperforming both existing AI systems and experienced radiologists. "This changes everything," Daniel said, his voice hushed with awe as we stared at the results. Despite our personal complications, we shared a moment of pure, unbridled joy, hugging and laughing in our exhaustion. We immediately arranged trials at 3 major hospitals. The clinical results exceeded even our expectations. Not only was our AI more accurate than human diagnostics, but it also reduced analysis time by 80% and identified patterns too subtle for the human eye to detect. Early detection meant earlier intervention, and earlier intervention meant saved lives. Our research paper in the Journal of Medical Artificial Intelligence created a ripple through both the tech and medical communities. Suddenly, the phone calls and emails we'd been chasing for 2 years were coming to us. Hospital administrators, research institutions, and investors all wanted meetings. Within 3 months, we secured $20 million in series of funding from a consortium of healthcare-focused venture capital firms. Our tiny team of 5 expanded to 30, then 55. We moved from our cramped office to a full floor in a gleaming building with views of the bay. The days of ramen and sleepless nights didn't end, but they were now punctuated with moments of triumph and validation. As CEO, I focused on building a company culture that valued innovation, diversity, and work-life balance, lessons learned from my own experience of burnout. Daniel excelled as CTO, driving our technical roadmap and expanding our AI capabilities beyond cancer detection to other conditions. Despite our growing success, I maintained my vow of silence about my work with my family. Our interactions remained superficial, limited to major holidays and brief check-ins. They knew I had left Horizon to start my own company, but showed little interest in the details. I never volunteered information, and they rarely asked specific questions. The contrast between my professional recognition and family disinterest was never more apparent than at Samantha's medical school graduation. For years had passed since that painful family dinner where I'd been asked to hide my career. Now, I was running a company valued at over $200 million. But as I sat in the audience watching my sister receive her medical degree with honors, I was just Alana who does something with computers to everyone around me. The foster home was filled with celebration afterward. Congratulatory bouquets adorned every surface and conversations buzzed with excitement about Samantha's future in oncology. I plastered on a smile and deflected questions about my life with vague responses, honoring the unspoken agreement that my work wasn't worth discussing in detail. "So how's work going, Alana?" My father's colleague Dr. Reynolds asked politely as we stood by the buffet table. "It's going well, thank you," I replied automatically, preparing for the conversation to shift elsewhere as it always did. But before Dr. Reynolds could respond, an older man with silver hair and kind eyes approached us, his face lighting up with recognition. "Excuse me, but are you Alana Foster? From Mediskin AI?" he asked, extending his hand. "I'm Dr. William Bennett, Chief of Oncology at Massachusetts General. We've been using your AI system for 6 months now, and it's revolutionized our early detection rates. Just last week, your algorithm identified a stage 1 pancreatic tumor that would have been missed until it was too late. You're saving lives, young lady." The silence that fell over our corner of the room was palpable. Dr. Reynolds looked between us in confusion. My father, who had been chatting nearby, turned with an expression of bewilderment. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were related to the Fosters," Dr. Bennett continued, oblivious to the tension. Are you and Dr. Samantha sisters? What a family of medical innovators. We're actually considering integrating your technology into our oncology research program. I'd love to discuss a potential collaboration. Samantha had wandered over during this exchange, her expression shifting from confusion to something harder to read, surprise mixed with what looked unsettlingly like resentment. I didn't know your company worked in oncology, she said, her voice carefully neutral. There's a lot about my work we don't discuss, I replied quietly. The moment was mercifully interrupted by my mother announcing it was time for cake. But the damage, or perhaps the revelation, had been done. For the first time, a small piece of my professional reality had penetrated the carefully maintained bubble of family ignorance. I left the celebration early, citing a red-eye flight back to California. As I waited for my Uber, Samantha followed me onto the porch. Why didn't you ever tell us your company was doing cancer research? She asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. You never asked, I replied simply. And I was explicitly told not to talk about my work at family gatherings. She looked genuinely confused. What are you talking about? Before I could explain, my ride arrived, saving me from a conversation I wasn't ready to have. The seeds of awareness had been planted, but I wasn't sure if they would grow into understanding or wither in the soil of long-established family dynamics. 2 months later, Mediscan made national news when our technology detected a rare brain tumor in a 5-year-old patient at Seattle Children's Hospital. The tumor, located in a difficult-to-visualize area, had been missed in multiple conventional scans. Our AI identified subtle abnormalities that indicated its presence, allowing for early surgical intervention. The child's prognosis went from grim to hopeful overnight. The story was featured on major networks, complete with tearful interviews with the grateful parents. The video of the little girl thanking the computer that found the bad spot in my brain went viral. Orders for our system doubled within weeks. What I didn't know until later was that my father's hospital had been among the new clients purchasing our technology. During a medical conference in Chicago, Thomas Foster had enthusiastically endorsed an AI diagnostic system that had transformed patient outcomes in his department, not realizing he was praising his daughter's creation. I watched the recording of his presentation, emotions swirling as he demonstrated features I had personally coded, explaining their benefits with genuine admiration for the unknown developers. The irony was almost too perfect. My work had finally earned my father's respect, but only because he didn't know it was mine. A week after that conference, I received an email from Forbes. They were finalizing their annual 40 under 40 list, recognizing the most influential young innovators across industries. Mediscan's impact on healthcare had caught their attention, and they wanted to feature me. The recognition I had worked so hard for was finally within reach, and this time, there would be no hiding it from my family. The Forbes 40 under 40 selection process was rigorous. Initial email exchanges led to phone interviews, then an in-depth video call with 3 editors who asked probing questions about Mediscan's technology, business model, and impact metrics. They were particularly interested in our origin story, how a computer scientist and a radiologist had combined their expertise to create something revolutionary. Your algorithm has been credited with saving over 200 lives in its first year of clinical use, the lead editor noted. That's an extraordinary achievement. What drove you to focus on medical diagnostics rather than more lucrative applications of AI? I hesitated, wondering how much of my personal motivation to share. I come from a medical family, I said finally. Though I chose technology instead of medicine, I always wanted to build something that would save lives. What I didn't say was how much of Mediscan's creation had been fueled by a desire to prove that my path was just as valuable as the traditional routes my family revered. Some truths were still too raw to share with strangers, even if they were writing my profile. After the interviews came a full-day photo shoot at our headquarters. Professional photographers transformed our office into a studio, capturing images of me working, leading team meetings, and explaining our technology at the whiteboard. The magazine wanted a cover shot featuring me in front of our visualization wall, where we displayed anonymized medical images analyzed by our AI. We want to capture the human face behind the technology that's changing healthcare, the photographer explained as he adjusted lighting. Show me the expression you have when you realize your work just saved someone's life. The resulting photograph caught something I rarely revealed publicly, the deep emotional connection I felt to our mission. It wasn't just about proving my worth anymore. It was about creating genuine impact. 2 weeks later, the confirmation email arrived. I had been selected for position 7 on the Forbes 40 under 40 list. Mediscan was valued at $800 million. With projections to reach unicorn status, the coveted billion-dollar valuation, within the year. The profile would span 8 pages, featuring my journey from computer science student to healthcare AI pioneer. When I shared the news with our team, they erupted in cheers and immediately planned a celebration. Daniel popped champagne in the conference room, offering a toast that brought unexpected tears to my eyes. To Alana, he said, raising his glass, who never stopped believing in this vision, even when the rest of us had doubts. Your brilliance and determination have quite literally changed the world. And this is just the beginning. That night, Heather came over with more champagne and takeout from our favorite restaurant. As we sat on my apartment floor like we had in the early days, she read through the advance copy of the Forbes article I'd been sent for final approval. Holy shit, Alana, she said, looking up from the pages with tears in her eyes. It's everything. Do your parents know yet? I shook my head. The magazine hits newsstands next week. I haven't decided if I'll tell them or let them find out with everyone else. They're going to lose their minds when they see this, she said, gesturing to the 8-page spread with my face on the first page. Their daughter is literally changing medicine. Just not in the way they planned. Part of me wanted to call them, to finally have the validation I'd been denied for so long. But another part, the part still wounded from years of dismissal, wanted them to discover it themselves, to feel the shock of realizing what they'd missed by not paying attention. I didn't have to make that decision. The day the magazine was released, my profile was picked up by major tech blogs and news outlets. Mediscan's website traffic increased tenfold, and my social media following exploded. Our HR department was flooded with resumes, over 500 applications in a single day. Hospitals and research institutions that had been hesitant to adopt our technology were suddenly eager to schedule demonstrations. I was invited to give guest lectures at Stanford, MIT, and Harvard Medical School. Investors who had previously passed on our funding rounds were calling with revised offers. We were no longer pursuing opportunities. Opportunities were pursuing us. Amid the whirlwind of attention, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in months, Samantha. My finger hovered over the screen, hesitation mixing with curiosity. Finally, I answered. Alana, she said, her voice a mixture of emotions I couldn't quite identify. I just saw the Forbes article. Your face is everywhere online. Yes, I replied simply, waiting. Why didn't you ever tell us about any of this? Your company is transforming oncology, my field, and I had no idea my own sister was behind it. The moment of truth had arrived. Do you remember that family dinner 4 years ago? When I came home for your residency celebration? Vaguely, she admitted. What about it? Mom pulled me aside before dinner and told me not to talk about my work. She said it would complicate things and that the night was about celebrating you. So I didn't talk about it. And then I never talked about it again. Silence filled the line as Samantha processed this information. She did what? She finally asked, her voice small. I never knew that. I always thought you just weren't interested in sharing your life with us. That maybe you were distant because you felt we didn't understand your field. You didn't, I said. The hurt still evident in my voice. None of you tried to. I'm so sorry, Alana, she said, and the genuine remorse in her voice caught me off guard. I had no idea. I thought you didn't want to be part of the family anymore. That you were too busy with your California life to bother with us. The irony was almost painful. I thought the same about all of you, that you were too busy celebrating the family tradition to notice what I was building. We've made a terrible mess of things, haven't we? Samantha said softly. Before I could respond, I heard the beep of another call coming through, my mother's number. Sam, I need to go. Mom's calling. She probably just saw the article too, Samantha said. Please talk to her, Alana. I think we all have a lot of misunderstandings to clear up. I switched calls, my heart pounding. Hello, Mother. Alana, Patricia's voice was uncharacteristically shaky. Your father and I just saw the Forbes magazine. With you on it? Yes, I confirmed. I'm on the 40 under 40 list. Your company, it's valued at $800 million? You've developed AI that detects cancer better than radiologists? Why didn't you tell us any of this? The question was so absurd I almost laughed. You specifically asked me not to talk about my work, Mom. Remember? Don't mention your job, it'll complicate things. Those were your exact words. The silence on the line was heavy. When my mother finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. I didn't know. I didn't understand what you were building. I thought it was just. I don't even know what I thought. Not this. In the background, I could hear my father asking questions, his voice rising in agitation. Alana, we need to talk, all of us, my mother said. Can you come home? Please? Your father is. We're both trying to understand how we missed so much. After years of silence and dismissal. They wanted to talk now that external validation had forced them to recognize what had been there all along. Part of me wanted to refuse, to let them sit with their regret. But Margaret's words echoed in my mind. Grudges are heavy luggage to carry through life. I'll check my calendar, I said, neither committing nor refusing. I have to go now. I have interviews scheduled all day. As I ended the call, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and emptiness. The recognition I'd once craved had arrived, and my family had finally noticed me. But the victory felt hollow, tainted by the knowledge that it took external validation, the Forbes name, the $800 million valuation, for them to see my worth. The prodigal daughter had succeeded, but not on their terms. On her own. And now they wanted back into a life they'd chosen not to understand for years. The question wasn't whether I would allow it, but whether any of us knew how to bridge the chasm that had grown between us. 3 weeks after the Forbes issue, I found myself standing on the familiar porch of my childhood home. The last red leaves of autumn crunched under my feet as I hesitated before ringing the doorbell. In the years since I'd last visited, the house looked largely unchanged. The same manicured lawn. The same brass knocker polished to a shine. The same sense of established permanence that had always made me feel like an outlier. My mother opened the door, her composure briefly faltering as she took me in. I wondered what she saw, the daughter who had left, or the CEO whose face was now recognized in medical and tech circles worldwide. Alana, she said, pulling me into an awkward embrace. Thank you for coming. Inside, the house smelled of roasting chicken, my childhood favorite that my mother prepared for special occasions. New photos had been added to the hallway wall, and I paused, surprised to see several frames containing news clippings about Mediscan and printouts of articles featuring my work. They were recent additions, hastily framed and hung, a belated acknowledgement of my accomplishments. The dining room table was set with the good china, but only 3 place settings. Where's Samantha? I asked, noticing her absence. She'll join us tomorrow, my father answered, entering the room. Thomas Foster looked older than I remembered. His confident posture slightly stooped, new lines etched around his eyes. We thought it would be better to talk just the 3 of us first. Dinner began in uncomfortable silence. The familiar ritual of passing dishes and pouring wine couldn't mask the tension that hung in the air. I answered their cautious questions about my flight and hotel with polite brevity, waiting for someone to address the elephant in the room. Finally, my father set down his fork with deliberate care. I've been using your software at the hospital for 8 months, he said. His voice uncharacteristically tentative. It detected a pancreatic lesion in Judge Watkins last week, stage 1, completely treatable. Without your algorithm, we wouldn't have found it until it was too late. He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. I've spent the past 30 years saving lives as a surgeon, but your technology will save more patients than I ever could in my entire career. And I didn't even know my own daughter created it. His voice broke on the last words, something I'd never witnessed before. I was wrong, Alana. So terribly wrong to dismiss your path. I'm sorry. The apology I'd waited years to hear landed with unexpected weight. I had imagined this moment countless times, my vindication, their regret, but the reality was more complex than my fantasies. The satisfaction I'd anticipated was overshadowed by a profound sadness for all the years of connection we'd lost. Why? I asked, the single word carrying the weight of a dozen unasked questions. Why couldn't you see value in what I was building? My mother reached for my father's hand before answering. Fear, she admitted. And ignorance. We didn't understand your world. And instead of trying to learn, we retreated to what was familiar. She paused, composing herself. When I told you not to discuss your work at that dinner, I thought I was protecting you from judgment. The family has always measured success through medicine and law. I didn't want you to face their questioning or criticism. So you criticized me first. I said quietly, you made me feel my work wasn't worth mentioning. I thought. My mother faltered. I thought it was just a job. A tech company job. I had no concept of what you were creating. That's not an excuse. It's an explanation of my failure to see you clearly. My father leaned forward. When I was your age, my father told me exactly which medical specialty to pursue, which hospitals to apply to. I followed his path without question. It never occurred to me that success could look different than what we'd always known. I kept thinking you'd eventually come around to medicine, he continued. That computers were a phase. By the time I realized your passion was genuine, my pride prevented me from admitting I'd been wrong. It was easier to maintain distance than confront my mistake. As the evening progressed, layers of misunderstanding peeled away. My mother revealed how she'd struggled with her parents' expectations, channeling them into pushing her own children. My father spoke of his fear that the family legacy he'd been tasked with upholding would end with his generation. I shared how their dismissal had driven me to prove myself, how success had become both my rebellion and my shield. And Samantha? I asked. Where does she fit in all this? My parents exchanged glances. She's had her own burden, my mother said carefully. The weight of being the chosen one, the child who followed the expected path, has been heavier than any of us realized. She felt she couldn't falter because she was carrying the family's hopes. My father added, while you were free to find your own way, she was locked into our expectations. Neither position was enviable. The conversation continued late into the night, painful truths surfacing after years of submersion. No single discussion could heal the fractures that had formed over decades, but for the first time, I felt we were at least acknowledging the same reality. The next morning, I suggested something unexpected. I want to show you my world, I said over breakfast. Would you come tour Mediscan's East Coast office today? The company's Boston location was smaller than our Silicon Valley headquarters, but showcased the same technology. As I badged us into the building, I watched my parents take in the environment, the open workspace, the collaborative energy. The walls covered with medical imaging displays and algorithm visualizations. My father stopped before a screen showing our neural network in action, analyzing a lung CT scan in real time. This is extraordinary, he murmured, watching as the AI highlighted subtle abnormalities a human radiologist might miss. I've used the output, but never seen how it works. My mother paused by a wall displaying thank you letters from patients whose conditions had been detected early because of our technology. These are lives you've saved, she said softly. Just as real as if you'd performed the surgeries yourself. The team members I introduced them to spoke of my leadership with genuine respect. My father's eyes widened when a senior developer casually mentioned a technical challenge I'd solved that had stumped the entire department. My mother grew quiet when she saw my office with Alana Foster, CEO, etched on the door, tangible evidence of what I'd built without their support. As we were leaving, Samantha was waiting in the lobby. She looked nervous, clutching a portfolio to her chest. "I hope it's okay that I came," she said, glancing between us. "I've been thinking about what you said, Alana, about us never really seeing your work." She opened the portfolio, revealing research papers and preliminary data. "I've been studying how your AI could be adapted specifically for pediatric oncology. The current systems sometimes miss the subtle differences in how cancer presents in children versus adults. I think we could work together on this, if you're interested." It was the olive branch I hadn't expected, an acknowledgement of my expertise paired with a genuine desire for collaboration. Not competition, not measured comparison, but true professional respect. "The Foster sisters revolutionizing cancer detection," I said, testing how the words felt. "I'd like that." My father cleared his throat. "The hospital board has been asking about expanding our AI diagnostics program. I could help facilitate partnerships if you're looking to grow your clinical research. And I've been thinking about transitioning my practice to focus on healthcare startups," my mother added. "Your patent portfolio probably needs strengthening if you're planning to expand internationally." They were offering what they could: connections, expertise, support, not to control my path, but to walk alongside it. It wasn't perfect reconciliation, but it was a beginning. That evening, as we gathered for dinner again, all four of us this time, the conversation flowed more naturally. We discussed the technical challenges of pediatric imaging, the regulatory hurdles of healthcare AI, and the potential impact of early detection technologies worldwide. For the first time in my adult life, I spoke freely about my work with my family. And they listened, really listened, with interest and respect. "I'd like to propose something," my father said as we finished dessert. "A Foster Family Foundation, focused on merging traditional medicine with innovative technologies. All four of us contributing our unique expertise. A legacy reimagined," my mother added, rather than simply repeated. Samantha and I exchanged glances, both recognizing the significance of the proposal. It wasn't just a professional collaboration they were suggesting, but a new definition of family identity, one with room for all our different strengths. As I considered their offer, I realized that what I was being given wasn't just acceptance, but something I'd never expected: the chance to redefine what the Foster legacy meant, not as an outsider, but as an equal contributor to its evolution. "I think Margaret would have loved that idea," I said finally, raising my glass in a toast to new beginnings. 1 year after my Forbes recognition, I stood in the Mediskin headquarters overlooking San Francisco Bay, watching the sunset paint the water in hues of gold and crimson. The company had surpassed all projections, crossing the billion-dollar valuation mark 6 months ahead of schedule. Our technology was now implemented in hospitals across 12 countries, with international offices in London, Tokyo, Singapore, Berlin, and Toronto. The Foster Family Foundation had become a reality, funding research that combined cutting-edge technology with clinical expertise. Our first initiative, an AI-assisted screening program for early-stage breast cancer, had already saved an estimated 1,200 lives in its initial year. The data showed that patients diagnosed through our program had a 94% 5-year survival rate, compared to the national average of 72% for similar diagnoses. Perhaps more remarkable than the professional achievements was the transformation in my family relationships. Samantha and I had established a monthly research summit, alternating between her hospital and my office, where our teams collaborated on pediatric applications of our core technology. The competitive dynamic that had defined our childhood had evolved into complementary partnership, her clinical insights enhancing my technical innovations. "We make a pretty good team, don't we?" she said during our last meeting as we reviewed promising results from our latest algorithm. "Better than either of us would be alone." My parents had each found ways to contribute meaningfully to Mediscan's mission. My father had become an invaluable clinical advisor, helping translate physician needs into technical specifications. My mother had restructured our intellectual property strategy, strengthening our patent portfolio against increasing competition. Our monthly family dinners, once exercises in polite distance, had become animated discussions about healthcare challenges and potential solutions. The healing wasn't instantaneous or perfect. There were still moments of tension, old patterns that emerged in stressful situations. My father occasionally slipped into his authoritative tone when discussing medical applications. My mother sometimes focused too much on appearances and public perception. I still bristled at any hint of dismissal toward technology-driven approaches. But these moments no longer defined our relationship. We had developed a new language of respect, one that acknowledged our different perspectives as valuable rather than threatening. The crowning moment of this transformation came unexpectedly through a national television interview. Samantha and I were invited to appear on Innovation Nation, a prestigious Sunday morning program highlighting breakthrough technologies. As we sat together on the studio set, cameras rolling, the host asked about our unusual partnership. The Foster sisters are redefining the intersection of medicine and technology, she began. Dr. Samantha Foster, a leading oncologist, and Alana Foster, a pioneering AI developer. How did this collaboration begin? I glanced at Samantha. Both of us momentarily transported back to family dinners where only one of our paths had been deemed worthy of discussion. But before I could answer, I caught sight of our parents in the front row of the studio audience, my father's eyes shining with unmistakable pride as he watched both his daughters, the surgeon and the technologist, recognized for their distinct contributions. Our collaboration began with understanding that different paths can lead to the same destination, I replied. Sometimes the most powerful innovations happen at the intersection of diverse perspectives. Samantha nodded. In medicine, we're trained to trust what we can see and touch. Alana taught me to trust what algorithms can see that we can't. Together, we're catching cancers months earlier than either approach could alone. After the interview, numerous young women in STEM fields reached out, sharing how our story had inspired them to pursue interdisciplinary careers. This unexpected impact led to the creation of the Margaret Foster Scholarship, named for the grandmother who had first encouraged my unconventional path, supporting young women pursuing careers at the intersection of healthcare and technology. The scholarship became my mother's passion project. Patricia, who had once whispered for me to hide my career, now proudly introduced herself at functions as Alana Foster's mother, yes, the AI healthcare pioneer. My father began including technology innovations in his medical school lectures, citing Mediscan's case studies alongside traditional surgical techniques. I never imagined retirement would look like this, he confessed during one foundation meeting. I thought I'd be playing golf and occasionally consulting. Instead, I'm learning coding basics from 20-something engineers and loving every minute of it. The personal healing that paralleled my professional success wasn't limited to family relationships. The intensity that had characterized my early career, the punishing hours, the single-minded focus, the emotional isolation, gradually gave way to a more balanced approach to life. I began working with a therapist to process the lingering pain of those years of dismissal and to develop healthier patterns of self-validation. I learned that while my drive had created something remarkable, the cost to my well-being had been higher than necessary. Success built on proving others wrong was still success, but it carried emotional baggage that success built on intrinsic purpose did not. The paradox, my therapist noted, is that in trying to prove you didn't need your family's approval, you organized your entire life around its absence. True freedom comes when their opinion, good or bad, is no longer the reference point for your choices. This insight led me to re-examine my definition of success. Where once I had measured it in valuations and recognition, I began to value impact and fulfillment more highly. I implemented a strict no-work weekends policy at Mediscan, modeling the work-life balance I had denied myself for years. And perhaps most surprisingly, I found love again. Dr. Andrew Collins, a neurologist specializing in AI applications for brain imaging, had joined our medical advisory board. Our professional collaboration gradually evolved into friendship, then into something deeper. Unlike my relationship with Daniel, where work had consumed our personal connection, Andrew and I established clear boundaries between our professional and personal lives. "You know what I find most attractive about you?" he asked one evening as we walked along the beach near his home. "It's not your brilliant mind or your impressive company, though those things are certainly remarkable. It's your capacity for growth. The way you've transformed pain into purpose." My family welcomed Andrew warmly, another healing marker in our evolving relationship. When he proposed 6 months later, it was my father who offered to host the engagement dinner. And my mother who surprised me with Margaret's restored vintage engagement ring. "She would have wanted you to have it," she said, pressing the delicate heirloom into my palm. For the woman who carried her spirit of independence into a new generation. As I look back on the journey from that painful family dinner to where I stand today, I recognize that success wasn't finding my name on the Forbes list or building a billion-dollar company. The true success was finding my authentic voice and then using it not just to prove my worth, but to create genuine value in the world. The silence that was once imposed on me became the space in which I forged my own path. The approval I was denied became the freedom to define success on my own terms. And the family that once couldn't see me clearly has learned to look with new eyes, not just at me, but at their own assumptions about achievement and worth. Sometimes silence isn't surrender, it's the incubator for your truest voice. And when you finally speak from that place of authentic power, the world listens, even those who once told you to keep quiet. If my story resonates with you, I'd love to hear about your own experiences of being underestimated or finding success in unexpected ways. Have you ever been asked to hide an important part of yourself? How did you respond? Leave a comment below sharing your story, and remember to like and subscribe if this resonated with you. Thank you for listening to my journey. May it inspire you to trust your unique path, even when others can't yet see its value.